Hi everybody and welcome to today's video where I'm going to tell you why after over 4 years in hospital that I decided to leave hospital pharmacy. So before we go on, I just want to mention a few things. Firstly, this video is not against a specific hospital. It's not about how hospital is bad. It's literally just about why I've left hospital pharmacy as a full-time role. I still love hospital. I'm still going to do it on a weekend and I'm still actually banking for my previous manager. So I still have my foot in the door. This video is just about why I've left it as a full-time job. And in the future, you never know, I might go back, but for now, I'm happy where I am. So I thought I would film this video. The second thing I want to say is if you are newly qualified and wanting to get into hospital, I would still highly recommend that route because I did learn a hell of a lot and it is harder to go from primary care or industry into hospital than it is to go from hospital to primary care to industry to community. So if you are looking for a job in hospital, continue doing what you are doing, and there are plenty of good things about hospital pharmacy as well. I was actually losing money when I was a hospital pharmacist full time, and that is because I was on call. There is a solution to this which I'm going to go into, but when I was on call I lived like an hour away from the hospital, so sometimes I'd be called in at like 3 a.m. It would take me an hour to get there, an hour to solve like what the issue was, and then an hour to get back. I'd get home at like 5 a.m, 6 a.m, and then have to go into work for 9 o'clock the next day. And I really struggled with that. So therefore I used to book hotels near my hospital. Now not everyone does this, so not everyone will relate to this reason, but that is one of the reasons why I decided that hospital pharmacy for now wasn't a sustainable lifestyle for me. If you are renting, then rent near the hospital and go for hospitals that are nearby to your home, which is pretty clear, but for me, I couldn't do that because I really liked this house that I was living in, which was West London. The job that I just got was North London at the time, and I'd already paid a deposit and I was under a contract, so I wasn't able to move. If you can move closer to hospital. Another reason is I felt like it was never 9 to 5. I honestly felt like the job was 24/7, and maybe that was because I was newly qualified as well, but I would constantly take the job home. Not only would I take the job home because I'd be worrying like, did I do this right? I was also contacted outside of hours as well if I'd made a mistake or if someone just wanted to check something, which is good because I'd obviously made a mistake or someone wanted to check something with me, so they would reach out and message me. And this happened more when I was newly qualified and making more mistakes, and it happened less as time went on, but I definitely felt worried. Like even if somebody messaged me from work who was just a friend and they were like, how are you, let's book in a date and meet, I would think, oh my gosh, did I do something? Like why is this person messaging me? And that would be the first thought that I had. So I definitely had like low level constant anxiety. We were always given an extra workload without having any taken away. So for example, if you decided to volunteer and do another role, for example being a diploma mentor or a pre-registration pharmacist mentor or pre-registration tutor or diploma tutor, like supervisor or whatever, you don't get extra time for those roles. And if you tried, like sometimes you were lucky, but it was difficult to, because in hospital everyone is so busy that a lot of the extra work that you had to do for those roles would probably be done outside of hours. When I was going through my diploma, my tutor was doing stuff for me outside of hours and she wasn't getting paid for it. I felt really, really bad. Sometimes we just couldn't find a time to work within extra hours, so we'd be doing it over lunch or after work. So I think that's something that hospital pharmacy could definitely improve on. Like if we are taking on these extra roles or doing these extra presentations or taking on like a certain management role, being given that time to do it would be good. Scarcity. So I felt like no matter how many extra weekend shifts that I did or volunteered for, it was never enough. I constantly felt if my friends were working and there was a gap, I felt like, oh my gosh, I should fill it. And I also felt like during COVID, like I should be the one going in to volunteer because I'm able-bodied and well. And I think that like I carried this burden, which I didn't have to, but I just felt it anyway. And I always felt like no matter how many times I volunteered, it was never enough because there's such a shortage of staff. And I think that is a general crisis that's going on in the country within the NHS right now. No matter how much extra work I did, there was always going to be more, which in some ways can be good because you can do extra bank shifts and like earn money, but in other ways I felt like this job was my life. One thing I realized about being a good hospital pharmacist was that if you want to be a really good hospital pharmacist, you need to put in that time outside of of work. I felt like I just honestly didn't have time within the day to get through the wards, see every patient, go through the drug chart, discuss everything with the doctors and the consultants and the nurses and physios and whatever, and also get time to study. And I know that some people are really good at just Googling a quick guideline and getting it in their heads, but I don't think I was one of those people. And I was often told, like, you know, just read the guideline on the way home. But I also felt like I just wanted to switch off after work. And even after work, I was so tired that I wouldn't want to spend my time studying. So I don't think that I fully learned everything about every single rotation within the rotation time, if that makes sense. Permanent staff weren't necessarily looked after. And a lot of the times I'd see quite a few like locum pharmacists walk in and be doing the same job as me and get paid double, but not necessarily do a better job than me. And I know that this could be in any job role where there are, you know, people coming in that are contracting. And I know that locum pharmacists in general don't have necessarily a good reputation. That's fine, and I don't mind about locum pharmacists or doing the same work as them, but it made me definitely think, why am I going through the trouble of being like a permanent staff member when you have to kind of pick up the pieces where other people might not have and get paid less. Annual leave. I definitely struggled with this. I don't mind what I'm told to do within my working hours. I'm completely happy to, if someone was like empty the bin, I'd empty the bin. If someone was like go and screen that whole ward, go and do 2 wards, like I could manage it. But I felt like annual leave within the NHS, not in any particular hospital, but just within the NHS, was very difficult. And my partner works in finance, and I know finances can be different, but we would be like booking a holiday and he would apply for annual leave and get it approved the next day. Whereas I was sometimes waiting 2 to 3 months, or I felt like I was questioned, why do you want the annual leave? Do you think that you could negotiate and possibly not have the full week off? That's just healthcare, because there are no days where you cannot have people working, like Christmas days, bank holidays, whatever. Like healthcare is a 24/7, all around the clock, all year kind of thing. But it was tiring to constantly plan my life around work and not get the days that we're entitled to off. I personally struggled with it. Sometimes I felt like hospital lacked flexibility, so we're often told as people working within the NHS to put the patient first. And sometimes I would be the patient, right? Sometimes, for example, I would have something that I want to go and speak to my GP about. I had to go for like a smear test. And I felt like, you know, we're always told put the patient first, and you put in all of this effort to put the patient first, but when you once in a while were a patient, it wasn't seen that way. And I felt this when I was working in a mental health hospital where I really had a hard time. Like I was going through a breakup, I had just moved to London, there was a lot going on, I felt very, very, very anxious. It was really a tough time for me. It was interesting to see how colleagues were more caring about patients that were admitted and not about their colleague, which was me. And I felt like a patient at the time. I would see these patients and I'd see myself, and I wasn't treated that way, even though I tried to explain what I was going through. And so in situations like that, I think it's really interesting, because I think if we're working in healthcare, we should all be like nice to our fellow colleagues and understand that people within healthcare also have their own health issues. And I think if there was a little bit more understanding about that, then that would make us a lot more motivated to work hard. But I just felt like some certain workplaces, like it was difficult to get that across, and I found that very ironic that we were working so hard to put patients first, but it wasn't always felt that way when it was me on the other side of it. Going back to on-call, I felt like not only was my life affected on call, but my partner's life was also affected, and he took it so well. Let's clap and cheer for the partners that are not in healthcare, that are so understanding. And he would be driving me to the hospital and driving me back, but if I got a call, he was going to wake up, and if I had to go in, he had to drive me. And it felt like it wasn't just my job, and it wasn't just affecting me, it was affecting both of us. That being said, I did learn a hell of a lot on call, and I 100% would recommend that if you're newly qualified, definitely go for like residency roles or on-call roles, because you'll learn so much. But I don't think it's a sustainable lifestyle. If I'm honest, when I was considering leaving hospital as a full-time job, I felt like a lot of people around me were miserable, and I think the pandemic obviously affected that quite a lot. I felt like I looked around and so many people were stressed or anxious or depressed or just not very nice. And I definitely think that that stems from the stress of the role. A lot of people don't know how stressful the role of a pharmacist can be because, you know, nurses are by the patient's beds and they have to do all of the physical work, and then doctors also have to examine the patient, come up with a diagnosis and manage that patient. For us, that stress came from like not ever having any room to make any mistakes, and I think that in itself brings a lot of stress. You know, it's manageable. It's not as if I didn't manage that. I could manage it, and I actually enjoyed ward work and everything. But I did get this feeling that a lot of people were complaining a lot, and I became one of those people. And I was like, actually, I want to make some changes to my life, and I don't want to complain anymore. After watching all these people sit down and complain during like lunchtime or after work and stuff, I realized I'm also becoming like that. And when I first started this channel, I was so excited, so enthusiastic, and for a while I felt like quite demotivated towards the end of it, which is why I knew I had to get myself out of that full-time role. Today I feel so much more positive and happy, and I'm really excited about the role that I'm in, which I'll go into at a later time when I know a little bit more about what I'm doing. But I'm so happy today, and I'm really glad that I walked away from hospital pharmacy full-time right now. Hospital hierarchy. So I felt like senior pharmacists were held to a different accountability to juniors. So as a junior, if a senior makes a mistake, it's really hard to approach them and tell them that. Whereas I think that when it comes to the other way around, it can be quite ruthless. It can be like, why didn't you spot this? Why didn't you do this? What happened here? Instead of just sitting down and being like, what happened? Like, what can we help you with? And that's going to be different wherever you go, depending on who your managers and seniors are. But I definitely felt like a lot of the seniors were held to a different accountability. The hierarchy was difficult because in certain hospitals I felt like, you know, it didn't matter what banding anyone was. We all just joined together and we all just helped each other out, and like it was invisible. Whereas in certain other hospitals I felt like there was definitely a set banding role and you couldn't go beyond that banding to bond with people of other bands. Like, that's just how I felt. Again, this depends on what kind of team you're in or who you're with, but that was just my personal experience. Finally, now that I'm out of full-time hospital and in this role that I'm in now, I felt like, looking back, I was running before I could walk. So I could manage a ward, screen 30 charts and discharge patients without a problem. But if someone was like, okay, what is the target HbA1c level for a diabetic patient on 2 different medicines? I'd be like, I don't know, because I haven't looked into the guidelines. In a way, it's kind of like you can read a book before learning the alphabet. And the role I'm in now, it is a lot more clinical in the sense that I'm having the time to go through all the guidelines, learn the guidelines, apply the guidelines, understand them, understand the evidence. Whereas in hospital, you kind of don't really have time to do that. Like, if you're going to do that in your own time. So I'm really happy about the fact that right now I'm in a role where I've reined it back and I'm learning how to walk before I can run. I'm learning my alphabet before I can read. And yeah, looking back, I now see that hospital is so specialist that sometimes you forget the basics, and I'm excited to go back to the basics again. So those are all the reasons why I've left hospital pharmacy in a full-time role. Like I said, I still love it, I still miss it. I'll still be doing weekend shifts, I'll still be banking, and who knows, one day I might go back. You never know about these things, but for now I think that I'm really happy with the role that I'm in. And I would suggest that if you have given hospital your time, and if you are feeling a little bit like stagnant, which is how I was feeling, I felt like I was just coasting without learning anything extra for a while. If you are feeling that way, then I would say definitely look at all of the different roles that a pharmacist can do, because they're so versatile. The pharmacist role is expanding. Don't feel like you need to stick to a certain place just because everyone else is. Think outside the box, look for roles that are outside the box, and you'll be a lot happier. So yes, I hope that you enjoyed this video today. Like I said, no tea, no shade, no negativity thrown towards any hospital. I just want to share the fact that out there are a lot more opportunities for us. So if you are feeling a little bit less motivated, know that you can do different things. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.